everybody. I pray this video finds you blessed. This week I'm turning another shave set out of some walnut, and I'm using blues, grays, well, one gray, two blues, and then like a pearlescent color and then a translucent color with this wood, and it really does accent this walnut beautifully. So I cut that round out, split that in half, threw that into containers, and then also cut up some other bits from other small piece that I had of walnut, so that a way I can fill all the gaps and holes. I originally cut this out a little too small, but these containers are tapered, so it's hard to cut them, you know, for the size of the container. For right now, these work really well. I'd like to get something that is uniform in diameter from the bottom to the top, but right now these work great. I get them from the Dollar Tree. I use one for the lid and one for the actual shaving container. They're the perfect height, and I feel that they're the perfect roundness as far as size. And then for my shaving brush handle, I've used several different types of molds, or containers, I should say. This particular container is a Play-Doh container that Play-Doh came in that I bought for my kids, and it's like the 88-cent size. It's not the bigger, fatter, it's more the skinnier, tall. I prefer them to be taller more than anything, because that gives you room to make the handle, at different varying heights. This mold is a little small, but it worked out just fine. You can always add wood to the top or bottom of it once it's casted as well, and I've done that in a few other videos. Every time the resin causes my wood to float, I always tell myself, I'm going to go and cut a bunch of these waste blocks to stick right on there so it'll fit on there perfect, and I never do. It's always when I need it the most is when I think of making them and don't. But a good scrap piece of wood thrown on top works just fine. Normally I try to leave any of my casted items in the pressure pot for at least 24 hours, especially if it's with wood. But I've been experimenting with different times when I pull it out of the pressure pot, and once I do several different types of finishes and pulling them out at different times, I can kind of get more of an idea of what to tell you. When turning this resin, it's always best, at least with my experience, to start out with some sort of negative rake cutter. So if you use carbide, you want to get a negative rake cutter for your carbide tip. And if you use traditional tools, just if you have a scraper, turn it into negative rake. You can go over to Mike Waldt's videos. He shows you how to turn your regular scrapers into negative rake. There's certain degrees and technical stuff that, I'm not good at explaining. So I just put that video in one of the cards above or at the very end, so you can follow along on how to turn your high-speed steel scrapers into negative rake. Total Boat resin seems to respond better with negative rake. It takes a little bit of time to learn how to cut it with a gouge. Just be patient with yourself. I always start out roughing it out with a negative rake anyway, because it's less aggressive and it doesn't cause it to chip out. The inside diameter of my shaving bowls range from 3 1/4 inches to 3 1/2. The shaving pucks that I order for my husband, are from Carden Farms, and they measure 3 inches in diameter. Some shaving pucks that we have ordered in the past by a different company were slightly smaller, and I'm sure they'll probably make them slightly larger. So 3 1/2 diameters, I would say, would be plenty large enough. And the 3 1/4 is just right for the 3-inch pucks. It gives room for the soap and the water and everything to seep down to the side of the soap and whatnot. As far as the height of the handle, that is completely up to you and how you want to design them. I try to keep them at the very least 2 inches high. And a lot of times I'll look at it and just see what kind of shaving knot that I have, and I'll kind of judge by the shaving knot. I don't want things to look kind of out of proportion. So I tend to go a little on the longer, taller side that gives you more room to create a good gripping handle. And that's what's important to me first, is that the handle has, in case you get soap on your hands, you got to think you want to be able to grip that shaving brush really well. And then of course, second, I think of as far as design, how it looks like. So those are some things just to keep in mind if you've never made these before and you kind of don't know where to start. That gives you an idea. So as far as finish goes, you definitely want to pick something that is going to be a long-lasting, watertight finish. These are obviously going to be having water on them, in them, and all of that. So all the stuff that you use, from your finish to gluing in your shaving knot, making sure that every inch of your piece is watertight. Unless it's all resin already and there is no wood in your shaving set, then you really don't have anything to worry about. Other than just making sure that your glue you use to glue your shaving knot into your shaving handle can, withstand tons of water exposure. I have had used CA finish as a finish for my husband's shave set, and it lasted about a good 1.5 years, and it's starting to show some signs of water getting to it. So I wouldn't recommend a CA finish. I think it's too brittle. From what I've been reading and understanding about CA, it's just too brittle for this type of application, and it doesn't hold up to the constant exposure to water. So I would recommend a resin. When I do wood pieces and I use resin as a finish, a lot of times the wood has air in it, so it wants to come to the surface as the resin's curing. So most of the time you get these little bubbles right over the top of where the wood is at. And it's not a horrible thing to happen, because a lot of times, especially for the shaving set, or depending on what piece I'm using, I like that depth. I like the depth that the extra coat gives it. So I always just prepare myself to do 2 coats. Now I use 2 different Total Boat resins for my finish, and depending on the piece and what's necessary is how or when I will use those different resins. For most cases, my procedure would be the 2-to-1 slow set on my first coat, and that gives time for the air to come out of the wood and through the surface without it curing too fast, and that's why you get those little bubbly things. Sometimes it happens regardless, so there's like no guarantee to how this is all gonna result, because it all depends on what you're starting with. So then the second coat, sometimes I will be able to use the fast set. You can use the 2-to-1 as your second coat. There's no problem. There's no specific reason other than the time. I don't want to wait 4 or 5 hours to be able to do anything to that piece. So I will use the fast set, which gives me a couple hours of jump time. So really, if you wanted to purchase just one resin to do your coats, you could do the 2-to-1 slow set, and that would be perfect. The fast set just helps speed things up for me, so I'm not having to wait as long for the second coat to finish. So yeah, that's that. That's why I do what I do. There's 2 things that I try to keep in mind when making my lids. Is you're going to put a coating of resin on both pieces, so leave yourself enough room so when you put your finish on that your lid will still fit. There's nothing more aggravating than having to remount it somehow and try to cut it or sand it back after it's done and then try to refinish it. It's always best to just think about that ahead of time and give yourself some room for a fit. It doesn't have to have a pop fit, and the way I get around not having to have that pop fit is by, and you other turners know what I'm talking about when I say that, is by making the inside of the lid, this is number 2 that I think about, is making the inside, the part of the lid that goes inside of the shaving bowl, a little on the weighty side. In other words, I make it a little heavier on purpose, so that way it will not just kind of like fall out when you pick up the shaving set. The lid kind of stays in there. Even if it's on the loose side, it will, the weight going inside of the piece will help to hold it down and ensure that if you had to make it a little looser because of your resin finish, then it will stay. So those are two things. Just keep in mind the resin finish, it's going to be on both sides, and keep in mind the weightiness of the lid. You want to make sure when they pick it up, it doesn't just fly off. The top of this seemed kind of plain to me. I'd like to have seen more resin in it, but it's just how I ended up cutting the piece of walnut, how it turned out. But it did give me an idea for a design to customize the piece for the customer. So I made a phone call real quick and got the approval, went over to my Cricut and was able to cut out a vinyl sticker for the top of the lid. I didn't record doing it, but prior to putting the vinyl sticker on, I had already put a coat of resin and sanded it back. That was so that a way I can just put a fast set coat, because I knew I was probably going to have to do 2 coats on the lid. So I can just use fast set, put that on, and it will save me a little bit of time in getting this finished, especially being that there's so many steps involved and so many coats involving with the vinyl sticker as well. So that's why I'm using fast set now, is because I already had a previous coat of resin that I sanded back prior to putting the sticker on. I made a mistake when drilling this out. I usually use my Forstner bit first so I can get the size of my knot hole already started, and then I will make the hole for the mandrel to fit in and tap it. But for some reason I wasn't thinking, and I went ahead and straight for the mandrel tap. So off camera I had to turn it back around and cut the hole for my shave knot and then re-tap it. The mortise tapers I get from nilesbottlestoppers.com. You may have seen the card pop up. I'll put the link in the description below for these specific ones that I use. She has them on sale right now. So as the current time I'm doing this voiceover is the same day I'm going to release this video, on Thursday, and I just checked, they are still on sale. I don't know how long this sale is going to last, so make sure you run over there and to use the link and check them out if you're interested in getting these mandrels. Like I said, they're on sale. So I used Pinterest quite a bit for shapes of all kinds of things, because you can pull up pottery, you can pull up everything you can think of to get inspiration for shapes. And there is a lot of shaving handles ideas out there on Pinterest, or you can Google it. Google Images will pop up some ideas as well. So that's kind of where I get my inspiration as far as shape goes. And other times I just kind of like wing it and see what happens. Most importantly, I would say make sure that the handle feels good, that you can get a good grip on it, that the style of it or the look of it doesn't supersede the ability to actually use it. So that's my number one, is sometimes I'll have my husband grab it and just kind of tell me how it feels in his hand, whether he can, he has larger hands, so that makes a big difference as far as how these fit. And then of course looks. You want it to look good and also feel good while using it. So that's my main 2 goals, is to make sure it fits great, you can hold on to it well, and it looks good. And if you can get those 2 down, then it's a win-win. For time purposes of the video, I did not show the coating of the handle with resin like I did my other pieces. It is the same exact process. To hold my shaving knot in, I'm going to use the 4-minute Total Boat Epoxy. I did use the fast set prior to this, but I really love the speed because I am a time person. I really love that this does not take long to cure, and I can eyeball it, pull it, whatever I want to do to it faster. To finish the lid in the bowl, I'm using 320 sandpaper to cut back that kind of rollover of the resin that kind of accumulates on the back where you haven't finished it yet. Cutting that back really nice, get it really nice and smooth so you don't have any ripples. And then I'm painting on the resin with paintbrushes that I get from the Dollar Tree. They come in a pack of 3 or 6, depending on which brushes you get, for only $1. I have tried to clean some of them and the bristles just end up falling apart. With resin you can clean with acetone or denatured alcohol. I find acetone breaks it up a lot better, cleans a lot easier, but you can't always do that with all these different cheap brushes. They'll fall apart on you. I get my Maker acrylic coins made by Bob Cook. His information will be in the description below, so you can contact him to have your own made. He's quick, fast, and inexpensive. I love these things, especially for resin pieces. It helps to where you can still see who made it, but then you're not covering up all that beautiful grain and resin colors in the bottom. So thank you, Bob, for those. I really appreciate it. I want to thank each and every one of you so much for watching my videos, for supporting my channel, all of your kind words, your comments, your ideas that you share with everybody in the comments. I love that. This community is awesome, wonderful, and I just hope to continue to inspire y'all to grow in this craft and to be inspired by each and every one of you. Truly appreciate y'all. Thanks again for watching. I pray you have a wonderful weekend. Take care and God bless.